Welcome back to the Poultry Doc Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Blayne Mozeshek. In this episode, we're back at Callahan's General Store for part 2 of our Chicken Feed series, taking a deep dive into feed labeling and feed form. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Poultry Doc Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Blayne Mozeshek, and today we're back at Callahan's General Store with Curtis, and we've done several episodes here now. Obviously, you sell chicks, everybody knows about that, right? So We're going to talk about feed today, how to read a feed ticket, and some common ingredients and things to maybe watch out for too with mixing feed.
Awesome, so, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. We'll dive right in. What do you think is the most popular feed here?
So I'd say, first of all, the most popular feed is going to be this one right here, West Egg Maker. It's a 20% layer pellet, and it's got a mini pellet, so it's a smaller grain. As opposed to the regular 5/32 pellets, which sometimes chickens don't eat as quickly.
Yep.
I think when people ask me what they should feed their chickens, the thing in the back of their mind usually is my chicken gonna eat this? When I first started working here, it was pretty much everybody feeding free choice feed in big gravity feeders like we have for our chickens here. Now more and more people with backyard flocks are moving towards the more traditional way of feeding, which is just to measure out the amount of feed you need, throw it out in the yard once a day, and let them eat it, and that way they don't waste so much of the feed.
Yeah.
But sometimes chickens will, especially if they're in a backyard setting where they don't have a lot of space, they'll start getting picky about things that they eat. So sometimes people like to give them mixed grain rations instead of the just straight pellets, the straight processed feed, simply to give them more variety. They seem to eat it faster, is usually what people tell me. So these two here, Poultry Perfect and All Flock, are very quickly becoming really, really popular. I would say 20% of the customers are going for these ones, and then the rest of them are probably going for something like this, or that Texas Natural right behind you, something like that.
And so this is a soy-free, corn-free version.
That's a soy-free, corn-free. It's a non-GMO, so mainly made of milo and peanuts as opposed to corn and soy. I always tell people nutritionally, they're the same. Everything's got to have the right amount of amino acids in it no matter what.
It's different, and what I've found, and I'm not going to knock any particular feed.
No, of course.
But when you do try to make up for those really common ingredients, so corn and soy, and most things are balanced for corn and soy,
exactly.
You start running into weird ingredients that may be off-putting, or that where they do become picky. We've seen that before with some of the soy-free, corn-free diets where there's like kelp meal and things like that.
Yeah.
The pellets are really dark, and so number one, it's extremely high in salt, and so what we saw there was like wet litter, kind of more what we call flushing in birds from a lot of salt content.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
just getting that salt out.
Yeah, so
that's super interesting.
Some of the things that you come across. Well, cool. I appreciate your help and helping us learn a little bit more about what goes on here at Callahan's.
Awesome.
So we can talk about feed form, and this is important too for feeding baby chicks, or feeding ducks, or feeding turkeys, or chickens. They really all have a preference. And what we see here are 3 different feed forms, and really I would say there's probably 5. We don't have mash feed here. It's basically just ground up ingredients. It hasn't been pelleted like these have. And the reason for feeding that, it's basically cheaper. The pelleting process adds cost. And so when we see like large commercial operations, they tend to feed a mash feed just because it's a more cost-effective solution. So what we have here is a bag of pellets. The process is they take all the ingredients, grind them up, and then run them through a pellet mill, which basically has a roller, and it forces these ingredients through a die that has this hole in it, right? This size hole. This is a average size pellet. And so this would be like for a grower type ration. This smaller size pellet is typically more common for ducks. And then what we have here is the crumble. And so the crumble is made, literally it's just these pellets crumbled up to make a smaller crumble. So more often used with baby chicks, and they tend to shy away. They'll pick through pellets to get to crumbles and finer feed. As they get older, they'll transition to more of a pellet. The 5th feed's whole grain feed. So if you've got really free range chickens and you want to give them a treat, I have no problem with whole grain diets like this. One issue you need to be aware of when feeding whole grain diets is that this isn't a feed that you would use solely. It's going to be deficient in a lot of the things that poultry need. So this would only be used as a supplement. But remember, when we give a supplement like this, it's also going to dilute out our formulated feed. Another advantage of pelleted feed is that it's going to contain all of the ingredients, or all those necessary nutrients and minerals and vitamins, everything in one package, right? So this is exactly the same. All these theoretically, all these particles of feed in here would be the same nutrient density. Versus a mixed grain product like these scratch grains, each grain is going to have a different nutritional profile. And also, we talked about earlier, this is only 10% protein, so this does not have on its own all the nutrient value that a bird needs. Take into mind when you're feeding scratch grains that it's going to dilute out the protein and other nutrient profile in your main feed, and so you really want to limit this and use it as a treat more than anything. That's especially true inside a closed pen area where birds don't have access to free range. If you're free ranging, your birds are open up to eat about anything, and so they find their own balanced diet. At that point, the mixed grain rations make more sense. This particular diet is specific for layers, so that means it's going to have higher calcium concentration. And we see the label's going to have min-max calcium, so 3.5 to 4.5%. That's in a good range. Recommended calcium levels in layer diets are 3.8 to 4.7% calcium. It's also important, while most of them, the standard will have it, that we look at the calcium to phosphorus ratio. So we see a max of 4.5% calcium and 0.8% phosphorus. This ratio should be 8 to 12 calcium to 1 part phosphorus. So this bag of feed is corn and soy free. I don't know anything about the manufacturer, so really just this is an interpretation of a feed label. One of the consequences of removing corn and soy from a diet is that they're replaced with other ingredients and they may not always be palatable. So just like ingredient lists for human products, feed products are the same way. And whatever's listed first will be the most dominant ingredient in this. So here we've got milo and then peanut meal and then oats. And so those are the top 3 ingredients in that order. And so that's kind of how we can get an idea what components the feed are. You can see in here, as we read through a label, we've got crude protein, lysine, methionine. So protein is protein. Lysine and methionine are going to be the 2 limiting amino acids in poultry, so that's why they're required to be on the label. Another thing a label is going to do for you, like this has to be on a feed bag, and it's going to tell you what it's for. The calcium, phosphorus, salt, crude, amino acid, all these are required to be on the label, and who manufactures it. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a scratch label. You can look on this and see right away, it's got protein listed here, methionine, lysine, those 2 limiting amino acids we talked about. And if you look at this label, it's not going to be what a chicken needs in total. These are only supplements, because if we're looking at a laying type chicken, we want 16 to 18% protein. You can see that this has 10%, well below what the bird needs. Lysine, methionine would be the same way. If we look at calcium and phosphorus, we really want our calcium to be at almost 4 to 5% of the diet. There's no supplementation going on in this. This is basically just an analysis of the grain that's in here. Now again, if we go back and look at our ingredient list, you can see the first thing on here is cut corn or corn chops, cracked corn. Interestingly, popcorn and sunflower seeds, whole wheat. So you can see the makeup of the feed from the most prevalent ingredient down to the tiny stuff at the bottom. So many folks wonder when the bag says medicated, what's actually in this feed. The medication in there is amprolium, and that's to control coccidiosis. We can either use medicated or non-medicated feeds. Again, medicated is going to help them control the parasite coccidia. Non-medicated feeds, those are really the feeds that we want to feed to birds that have been vaccinated for coccidiosis, and they're going to be vaccinated at the hatchery before you get them. That non-medicated feed allows the coccidia to cycle and produce immunity like we want. Well, thanks again, Curtis, and thanks everybody for joining. This is the Poultry Doc Podcast. We'll see you next time. Click the like button, subscribe, tell your friends. Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Awesome.